Hey everybody, welcome for another Sidequest episode of the Zamora 2-Player Podcast. I'm Garrett Zamora, your Player 1. For my Player 2 today, I am joined by very special guest, Amanda Achen. I forgot to ask you before we started this intro. That's how I say your name, right?
Yeah, it was perfect.
Okay, perfect. I'm keeping this in, by the way. This is a well-oiled machine. Sure. Amanda is a both classically trained and jazz and pop singer. Performed at Final Fantasy related events like FanFest, Eorzean Symphony, and I think Distant Worlds as well, if I'm not mistaken, in my research.
To happen soon.
That's why it was in my brain, because I saw your post that you're going to be at Distant Worlds. Yeah. In the Final Fantasy circle, you're known for your vocals in songs like Tomorrow and Tomorrow from Shadowbringers, Flow from Endwalker, and My Star from Final Fantasy 16. All three of which have been emotional gut punch songs for me, so I'm very excited to have you for that reason. But yeah, welcome to the show, Amanda. I really appreciate you taking some time.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for hitting me up.
So I warned Amanda before we started, we're gonna be talking about a bunch of Final Fantasy related stuff, because anyone that watches knows me and my brother love talking about that anytime we get the chance. So my first question, Amanda, for you is, so when I think Shadowbringers was the first like Final Fantasy project you were brought in to record for, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So when you were brought in to work on Tomorrow and anything else Shadowbringers related, were you aware of like the pedigree that Final Fantasy music was, and like the sort of how well regarded it was before you accepted that?
No, dude, I didn't. I mean, I'm a new gamer too. Like
Sure.
this is kind of my shtick on Twitch. Is the last video game I played was probably Banjo-Kazooie or Glover in like 1998.
Sure, yeah. I have a N64 related question later for you, because I did know that. I heard you talk about that.
That's amazing. Yeah, I can school you on some Diddy Kong Racing if you need to.
Okay.
So when I met Soken, it was for a concert that I did in 2018. That was it was the Eorzean Symphony. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Was it? It wasn't. Still to this day, I'm like, wait, which one was it? Because there's so many of them, which is cool. Pretty sure it was Eorzean Symphony. And I had no idea. It was a gig that I got called in to do as a soloist. I was thrilled. It was in the Microsoft Theater, which is where they do. Is that where they do the Grammys? It's where they do one of those award shows in LA. Yeah,
Big
so
time.
it was cool. So I had seen it, watching those shows. Then I got to be on that stage and perform, and I met Soken at that concert, and we exchanged business cards, mm-hmm. And he hit me up a year later to do the theme, and I was like, okay, cool, video game, yeah, great. But I didn't realize how important the music was, especially in 14, because it's an MMO. I didn't know what an MMO was.
Sure, yeah.
I did an interview on a local radio station a year and a half ago, and I was explaining to the guy what an MMO was, and I was like, it's a massive multimedia player online. My boyfriend started giggling. He's like, media player?
I mean,
and my interviewer had no idea.
You are playing a form of media, so I wouldn't say it's incorrect.
Sure. Yeah, but so to answer your question, no, I really had no idea, and I still didn't quite get the grasp of it until FanFest. Yeah. And it wasn't until after FanFest that I was like, whoa, this community is awesome and crazy, and there's so many people, and I want to connect, and I want to know what's going on in the game. So that's when I decided to play it and stream it.
Sure.
So since then, which was June last year, 2023,
okay.
I feel like I've gotten a deep dive and a very quick education on what gaming is and what MMOs are and what streaming is.
Sure.
I just like dove in headfirst, and it's been awesome.
And I'm a avid 14 player myself. Like, I've been playing it since like Realm Reborn beta essentially, and I play that because well, I'm not. I didn't play much of 1.0 way back because my computer wasn't good enough to run it. Yeah. But yeah, and I got into it because, as we, listeners of this podcast have heard a million times, Final Fantasy is a very important game to my brother and I. And 14 does a lot of fan servicey things for, it's great for someone new like yourself coming into it and like a lot of stuff for you to discover. And then it just has like an extra layer for someone who knows all the games, just like little Easter eggs here and little references here and things like that. So, I played a ton of that game, and the music in 14 itself has like its own like insane following, because Soken he puts out so much good music for that game. And then even outside of that, if you ever start spending time going into the other Final Fantasies, it's like it doesn't end with 14. Like that whole series has just been so well regarded with music. I think my brother and I have done probably about 2.5 episodes of just talking about Final Fantasy music so far.
Wow.
So it is a high pedestal to be on for sure. So my follow up would be, are you glad you didn't know? And if I didn't know if you knew, and if you didn't, I was going to be wondering if you're glad that you didn't, or that would have made you more nervous.
Would have made me nervous, but I think if I knew how impactful video game music was when I was studying in university,
sure,
I would have deliberately chosen to go down this path and be in this industry. But it's still so new for musicians to know that this is a viable form of performance and recording. And in LA, I mean, if you live in LA, which I do, most musicians are here to perform for commercials, TV, film, session industry in that way, and video games are a part of that. But I mean, it's quickly becoming one of the most what's the word I'm looking for? It's like surpassing sports in how much money and fame is attached to video games, So musicians aren't taught that. We're not aware of that. And it's still this kind of undiscovered territory. And I feel like I am on the front end of that, and I just kind of ended up there, and that's really exciting. And I want to keep exploring more and keep seeing what I can do in this industry, not only just as a singer, but I want to start doing voice acting as well. And I've started taking some voice acting workshops for video game, and I've got friends who are in the industry, and I've got all the gear, like, I've got all the things. And my dad was he was a voice actor for a bit.
Oh, wow.
When I was, I mean, like before I was born and around the time after I was born, he was still doing it, and he got some national spots on some radio commercials, and I think his performance there and how he carried himself as a person, and he would read to me and do voices, that really impacted me as a child and encouraged me to want to be a performer and use my voice. And so now it kind of feels full circle that I'm in an industry, or I'm beginning to peek into an industry where I'm really interested in exploring my voice and all of its potential, and that includes voice acting. And so it's really cool to want to do that. And
I mean, like you said, you got the hardware, and you got the you got the voice for it, so you might as well try and dip your toes in for sure.
Now I just got to figure out like what kind of characters I'd be good at, and learn all of these new tools, because using your voice for singing is different from using your voice for speaking. And that's something that I'm really discovering as I'm streaming, because it's so much speaking. And I was trying to do a lot of voice acting in ARR, but it's ARR. And there's so many cutscenes and dialogue.
Oh, like as you're streaming it.
Yeah, so it's exhausting.
Oh, no. No, don't do that.
Well, I managed to get through it finally.
Oh, my God.
I just got to Heaven's Word, so like now there's going to be a lot more voice acted scenes, which is great for me.
Sure.
But
that would be exhausting.
It's so exhausting. And I'm like, whoa, I mean, I like voice acting, but in smaller stints,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
learning endurance there,
Yep.
learning techniques for speaking versus singing, because yeah, it's still my voice, but they're like two different instruments,
Sure, yeah.
So
Yeah, I
yeah,
got to use them very
cool.
different ways.
Hmm.
How does your approach differ when you're getting ready to perform someone else's work, like Soken, for example, versus getting on stage to perform one of your own jazz covers with Citizen Kitten?
Well, I'll tell you how they are similar
Sure.
first, and maybe start with that. So it doesn't matter what the genre is of the music for me. What is beautiful about being a singer is that, continuing comparing the voice to an instrument, we are the only instrument that has words. We're the only instrument that
Sure.
can speak a text,
Right.
sing a text. So it should be the priority of the singer, unless you're doing something that is vocalese, you're singing on vowels, you're singing up in a made up language. But I would argue that even if you're singing it up in a made up language, you still want there to be some emotional connection that you, the singer, has to this made up language.
Right.
So the priority should be expressing a personal experience, attaching emotions, attaching a world, images in your head, feelings, memories, whatever. That, I mean, that's acting.
Right.
So that's the job of the singer, is you're acting on pitch,
Sure. I
basically,
like that.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, and to also pull it away from acting, because that can be this thing that feels very put on for some people.
Mm.
It's really just about connecting personally to emotions.
Okay, yeah.
That, I think, at its core, is what acting is, and you can like perform and learn all of these techniques to do that, but really you're just attaching a personal emotion onto an experience in real time. So it doesn't matter if it's classical music, if it's game music, if it's music that was written for me, music that I'm interpreting that was written, that Bach wrote. Definitely not for me,
Right.
unless I find some sort of a time machine and I go back and I'm Bach's girlfriend. I don't know. He probably had a lot. I mean, that guy was pumping out babies, man.
Yeah, that was a different world back
Yeah,
then.
just as prolific as he was with writing music, he was also prolific in child rearing. He probably would have no time for me if I found a time machine. Anyway,
Sure.
so the most important thing for me is having it feel real for me personally.
Okay.
And so the listener and the audience is having an experience. And with Citizen Kitten, it's fun because they're songs that already exist. I
Yep.
didn't write them, but our arrangements
Yeah.
might as well be original music,
Yeah, there's a lot.
because
You're not just playing a song that already exists. You're transforming it and performing it in a
yeah.
whole new light. Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
you must have listened to
Of
some.
course I
That's
did.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yay. We did do a live one on Twitch, so if you go back, I
Ooh.
think, yeah. Oh no, the VOD must be off because it's been over 3 months. Is that how long
Ooh,
Twitch leaves it up for
it
partner?
might
I
be
can't
three
remember.
months. Yeah.
Yeah, but I might put that on YouTube. But anyway, um, yeah, it's unique. Our arrangements make it feel like it's a song that we wrote, while the lyrics and the skeleton still remain the song that we didn't write.
Right.
So it does still feel like it's mine in a way, or it's ours in a way. So I get to really put my spin on it. And with Citizen Kitten, there's this element of humor involved, because I think when you take an artist who really knows their shit, then take it a step further and don't take yourself so seriously.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
you see artists who are really good, they have a sense of humor or irony or something that's like, I'm not taking myself so seriously here, and I
Right.
think that's important. Because otherwise things are just like so intense and boring if it's just so serious. And I mean, look at Soken. He's a great example of that. You know,
Oh,
he is such a goof on
yeah.
stage.
I love
And
anytime
he's
he comes on stage.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's great because it really balances out. Because obviously he's the man. Like
Yeah.
he's so good at what he does. He's brilliant, you know, and he's so good that he's not taking himself seriously when he doesn't need to.
For
When
sure.
he's working, when he's writing, it's serious. But then when he has this interaction with the audience,
Yep.
it's humorous.
And I
Um,
think that lends like a degree of authenticity too, when you can take your
yeah,
kind of ego out of it and have fun with it. You know what I mean? Like you said, not take yourself too seriously. I feel like that really opens those sort of floodgates for actually more of your personality to come through. And like I said, lend some authenticity to it. So yeah, that's a good perspective for
yeah.
sure.
To riff off of that, that's kind of why I started streaming.
Sure.
I mean, in addition to wanting to play the game and connect, and I'm like, wow, this is going to be a great way for fans to connect with me. I wanted people to know that I'm really a big dork.
Sure.
Because
That's why this
when I'm on
podcast
stage,
exists. For me too.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. People hear me singing these like serious songs and they're
Sure.
beautiful and they should be taken seriously for their message.
Yep.
I'm not mean trying to say that you should find everything to be a joke.
Yeah,
Like these
no.
songs are not jokes, but the way that you carry yourself as an artist, or you can even have a little wink, you know, of something when I'm performing on a fan fest or something, and if I'm ever given a moment for the microphone, I try to bring in my Amanda personality because I want
Sure.
people to know that I'm not this like perfect angel goddess whatever that is on a
Sure.
pedestal just 'cause I'm in a sparkly gown and I'm moving in slow motion and I'm singing these
Yeah.
intense songs. Like, okay, yeah, but I'm really a
You can
real
do that, but
human.
that's not all you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, they can exist at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, that's a great perspective to have. And I mean, if you didn't start streaming, how would people have named you the Crystal Mommy, or what is the real Crystal Mommy? I think is what they called you. I for
Yeah.
I didn't realize that it was like your viewers, or I don't know if I can't remember if you had said in an interview before if it was Twitch or YouTube that started dubbing you as that. But when I heard that, I was like, that makes
Social
perfect
media.
sense that they would be the one to come up with
Yeah.
that name.
Yeah. Well, I coined the real Crystal Mommy.
Okay,
I wasn't trying to be arrogant, but Crystal Mommy on Twitch was already taken. So
sure,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
oh, I'm the real one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that makes perfect sense that it would have come out of a Twitch chat. So that yeah, I had a good laugh when I heard that one.
Well, I
Um,
think the term mommy is like it's either a Gen Z term or it's a gaming term or something, right? And
yeah,
you
I'm too
is
old.
that in your vernacular? Okay, so
It-
maybe it's a Gen Z thing because I started. I mean, the way that that came about for me was I didn't even have Twitter for a while. I
sure,
only have had Twitter for like a year and a few months at this
sure.
point. I was mostly on Instagram, and Instagram is so broken and dumb.
Hmm,
For people who did want to reach out to me would find me on Instagram or maybe even Facebook. I have a Facebook page. I don't know. TikTok. I like barely have a TikTok.
sure.
And people were like, "Oh my God." First, I think the first time someone said something to me, they commented me as mom, just straight up mom or mother. I'm like,
That's got a
what?
very
Is this
different
a thing?
it's different vibe.
What's going on here? Yeah, and then I kept saying mommy, mommy, and then and so I kind of like Googled what does mommy mean in gamer lingo, gamer term, whatever. And I mean, I guess it's something that people call like NPCs,
Yeah,
powerful
I've definitely
women.
heard the character
Yeah,
in Endwalker referred to as Crystal Mommy before.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
it made perfect sense when I heard that like a fan sort of started. You know, it came from the fan side. Because yeah, I've definitely heard that character referred to as Crystal Mommy before.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does not surprise me in the least that it would it develop that way.
Yeah, I think it's also a spinoff of like daddy, when we call
Sure.
women or people who are attracted to men call some hot guy daddy, so I
Right.
guess you can do that with a woman too. But for me, I mean, what really made sense to me was because I had Googled a little bit about Heidelin and Vanat and her story, and
Yep.
while I know like kind of some spoiler, I don't know how it happens. I don't know
Sure.
how it gets there. But I was like, oh, she's kind of like the goddess of the universe, and Warrior of Lights are kind of like her children. So that must be why they're calling me mommy. So that was
Yeah.
my line of reasoning there. I
Yeah.
was like, great, I'll go with that. Perfect.
That would be my assumption as well, based off
Yeah.
the songs that you performed and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I found that really entertaining when I learned that it was not you that came up with that name. It was like the community. It was like, yeah, that makes
Some
sense.
people think it was me, and they're like, she's so pervy or whatever. I'm like, dude, I did not come up with this. This was you guys all the way.
Yeah.
Come
Yeah.
on.
You just roll with it.
Yeah.
So I've heard you talk. I think it was with your interview when you sat down with Marco. You had a really good perspective on having no context when performing a song like Flow. And we spoke a little earlier about how that in terms of lending authenticity to a song. I think that is a big sort of reason for that too. I've always thought about like listening to music and having context from the listener's perspective. But can you unpackage it a little bit? What it's like on your thoughts about having the context or not having it, I guess, as the performer.
Yeah. I think what you said about having context as a listener is important because as the artist, it really after it leaves your mouth, after you finish playing it, after you paint it and hang it on the wall, you have to let go of expectations of how people are perceiving it.
Right.
Because then it is the viewer's job or the listener's job or their not their job but their pleasure, their
Sure.
ability to then interpret it through their lens from their perspective, from their particular emotional headspace. So I can do my best as the artist to put as much emotion and connect as much emotion personally as I can, which kind of goes back to the thing we were talking about 10
Yeah.
minutes ago.
Yeah.
And for that, I don't need to have all of the backstory. Um, a lot of how I work is kind of relying on spontaneity and improvisation. I think that's why I enjoy jazz.
Sure.
But that's kind of my approach to performing and interpreting and acting in the like little limited acting that I have done. I used to be in musical theater and I've done some operas and I've done some film stuff, but I don't really consider myself an actor. But you have to act to sing. So in that aspect, I am.
Sure.
But I'm not often sitting there sketching out an entire backstory and life or building a world for a song or a character. Maybe I should do more of that. I think that would be useful. But it's not necessary and everybody has their different approach.
Sure.
Maybe as I get into voice acting, it would be good to do that and to be more specific.
I feel like voice acting would benefit more because
Mhm.
the context is less what would be the word? Not ethereal, but like it's more pointed. Whereas
Mhm.
music, I feel like, is a lot more, open to interpretation.
Yeah,
So I think
totally.
that's why it lends itself, not having context lends itself well to performing music, maybe, is because it's
Yeah,
not a very specific message that the composer is trying to tell you. It's more of an interpretive sort of form of entertainment. Whereas,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and if we're comparing that to voice acting, well, there might be a very specific world and a
right,
very specific backstory, but sometimes there's not. Like sometimes you
yep,
got to come up with something on the spot for a character that doesn't really have a lot of lines, but you still want that to be full of life and expression. So that's where some like quick, spontaneous world building can come in handy right there. But yeah, I mean, you pretty much nailed it. Back to your initial question, that music is a bit more abstract, or can be.
That's the word I was looking for. Yep.
Yeah, depends on the context. Also, you know, if I'm in an opera that's like really built out in its story, then yeah, I need to kind of familiarize myself with that. I could go even more steps and be like, what happened to this character when she was 5 years old that caused this trauma that she's dealing with now when she's talking to this guy, you know? Some people would do that, and that's their process. But at the end of the day, I think it just depends on the artist, it depends on the person. Going forward, another reason why I want to play the game, I do want to know the backstory. I want to know the lore as much as I can. There's so much of it.
There's a lot.
But I want to get a basic understanding so that, you know, potentially by the time I make my next recording, whenever that is, whatever that is, I'll be caught up.
Sure, yeah.
And then I'll have an insight that I didn't have before that may not affect the performance, because I'm still a really emotional performer and singer, but personally, I'll be able to connect the dots, and I think that would be really awesome.
Yeah. And I feel like, you know, when it is a situation where you don't have the context and you're sort of bringing your own sort of, you know, emotions into it, unguided, music is so fascinating to me in games specifically, but just in general, is like, you can take the music on the page, you can take the singer's voice, you can take all these factors, but when it comes together really well in a way you're describing, I really feel like it's like greater than the sum of its parts, right? Because there's that authenticity that just breathes an extra layer of life into it that may not have been written down on a page somewhere. So I like that. That's why I liked your perspective of sometimes not having the context can just bring a whole new side of a performance that maybe the composer wasn't even thinking about beforehand or whatever, right? So that
is just so exciting. That's the beauty of working with a composer or being the first person to create a role, because there's nothing else that you can compare it to or be influenced by. It's purely your instincts and whatever direction you may or may not have, but that's creation, like at its purest, and that's really fulfilling.
Cool. Yeah, that's I love hearing so I didn't say this early, but I am not musically inclined in any way. So I love hearing, like, you know, whether it's someone who writes music, performs music, I really love hearing your perspective on that kind of stuff, because it's a world that I am so far removed from. I just enjoy the finished product, and I listen to it a lot, but I have no idea how the sausage is made, so to speak.
Oh my gosh, that's how I feel about film. Like my boyfriend, he's got really great taste in film, and we'll watch some amazing stuff, and I'll sit there and I'm like, I can't analyze this or pick this apart, or if I'm telling you stuff, it feels really banal and layman, but like, that was beautiful and that was good. Like, I can be specific with the score, things like that, but like the art of filmmaking is, I love it, and somehow it's so foreign to me.
Sure.
Like, why?
This movie is good. Period.
I felt really impressed. It made me feel happy and sad and scared. Like, wow. Cool.
All right. Yeah. That's about as deep as I could get with it. So you're fine. You're in good company. So what would be a difference between maybe your approach when performing something like Flow, which is a much more Flow versus a much more somber song like My Star? I'll use those as the example, since we talked about your performance in that. Is it different how you approach something that's a little more up? Well, I mean, Flow is still slow, but it's like more uplifting, I feel, and hopeful. Exactly. Whereas Flow is much more somber.
Yeah, so In those instances, the direction that Soken gives me is often emotionally driven. He'll
Okay.
give me kind of, um, yeah, an emotional landscape for
Okay.
either the entire song or certain sections. Maybe he'll say something like, okay, I want this part to sound really motherly, like you're encouraging your child, and then this part to sound like you're having a party.
Sure.
So he will give me some direction from his end. Um, but it how I work with him, I'm often well, it's usually never live. We'll have a call in the beginning to kind of discuss
Sure.
sometimes, and then I'll go and I'll make my recordings. And how he has me do it, he always wants me to send him like 3 or so takes with different approaches.
Okay.
The first take would be as written, exactly what's on the music.
Yeah.
The second take would be me adding some embellishments here and there.
Sure.
And the third take is basically like, have at it, do whatever you want.
Okay.
Disregard anything I've told you or kind of do that, but like you can make up your own melodies if you want.
Sure.
And then he'll comp takes together. Comp means he'll take the best parts.
Thank you. I was gonna ask.
New line. Yeah. And so it's really collaborative like that. Like
Sure.
we're collaborating remotely in a really unique way. But that gives me the freedom to explore different approaches.
Okay.
Technically, from a singing perspective and emotionally. And then he just kind of makes it a new take. But yeah, I think the approach in a somber piece versus a hopeful piece is really still kind of exploring those instinctual feelings that I get from
Sure.
the music, from the lyrics, from both together. When I first get a song from Soken, it's usually just the MIDI track.
Yep.
Generally, I get it before the orchestra or the band has recorded it.
Right.
And MIDI is pretty good. And so I can get a feeling for just the emotion of the track
Right.
first. And then I have the sheet music, and then I'm looking at, okay, here's the melody, here's the lyrics, how does that affect me? And then I put it together and go from there.
Sure.
But yeah, it's mostly instinctually driven by how it's making me feel.
Well,
I don't
speaking
know if
of
that answered.
no, yeah, and speaking of being emotionally driven performances, 2 of the times, and the last one was Endwalker 2 years ago. Two of my biggest ugly cries in video games have been because of you, in Endwalker and in When My Star Plays. So yeah, emotionally driven, performances, I'd say is pretty on point. Yeah, those ones destroyed me. So great work on that one. So with this is one thing that would always like stress me out as a performer, which is why I'm not a performer. With the a good amount of like live performances that you have under your belt, what is like one of like what like the worst like nightmare scenarios, something 5 minutes before a curtain goes up, or backstage shenanigans or anything like that? What's like one of the most stressful moments you've had in that regard?
Well, okay, so it's funny that you specifically said nightmare, because as you were saying this, I was thinking about the fact that I do in fact have a literal nightmare.
Okay.
That is a stress dream that happens when I feel like I'm not prepared enough for something. And if I ever get that dream before a performance, I know I need to keep practicing.
Okay.
and it goes like this. It's always some variation of this. I am backstage in the wings, like back in the curtains. I can see the stage in front of me, ready to go on.
Yeah.
The lights are dark because it's backstage. I have the score or the script in my hand. I haven't looked at it at all. And the show is happening. It's opening night and I'm about to go on. And I'm like, I have to learn and memorize all of this right now. Like, where was I? Why didn't I do this? Holy shit. And that's my nightmare stress dream, and I get it a lot, and it's really my brain telling me like, you don't feel prepared enough. Even if
Sure,
I
yeah.
think I put in enough time on the preparation, if I get that dream, I know that
Right back, right back to the booth and
my
practicing.
subconscious
Yeah.
is like, actually, you could do more.
Sure. So what's the
So,
worst actual one that's happened? Or
oh,
has there been, a really,
well,
really bad one?
I think because of that, I'm usually really prepared
Oh,
because
okay.
I live it out in my dreams enough to
Sure,
wanna
yeah.
live it out in
You don't want to do it in real
reality.
life.
Yeah, I get scared enough by my subconscious. But, I mean, there's always times where in recent memory, this hasn't happened, but, like, when I was in university and I'm singing recitals, in different languages, when you sing classically, you sing in Italian, French, and German, and
Mhm.
English, and Latin, and Russian. I don't know, there's a lot of other ones, but those 3, usually 4 with English, 5 with Latin. Yeah, it's really those 5.
Sure.
Yeah, but you're memorizing a lot of different languages that
Yeah.
you don't speak
Like
fluently. You
phonetically,
speak Yeah, exactly.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, IPA is more than just a beer, it stands for International Phonetic Alphabet, and
Okay.
I know that very well, and that's
Sure.
how I'm able to sing in other languages, pronounce it correctly, do the, translation, so I know more or less a literal translation, and I write it in the music,
Sure.
and I've got that memorized. But, yeah, you don't have to speak the language to sound like a native speaker when you're singing, because we
Right.
cheat when we learn IPA,
Right.
and we write that in our music. IPA, by the way, is what shows up when you, type in yeah, I guess you wouldn't look through a book anymore, who does that? But when you go to the dictionary and you see something in
Oh, yeah,
brackets
yeah.
and some of the
Yes.
letters look normal and some of them
Sure.
aren't, that's IPA.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
So I
yeah.
know how to read
Oh, okay.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be God. I because I look at, obviously most of my familiarity with your work is Final Fantasy related, but like those are English words you're singing. Like the singing in other languages is just like beyond me. I can't. It's a skill I can't comprehend. That's so impressive to me.
We've all got our skills,
Yeah, I
right?
guess.
There's
Yeah, you.
little skills I don't have that I wish that I had.
Sure.
I was like, "Why?" Um, so in those instances, when you're memorizing other languages, and the most recent time I did this was, with Joe Hisaishi 2 years ago, and I was singing in Japanese for his Studio Ghibli concerts.
Oh yeah,
And
I've
I
heard you talk
didn't
about those. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I drilled and drilled and prepared so much that I didn't have this problem, but when I was younger and I wasn't prepared enough, I would blank out on whatever language
Oh
I was singing, usually like French, because
yeah.
French all sounds the same after a while, man.
Yeah.
And then I'm just on the spot making up French words. And
Just
hopefully
add some
I'm
le
able to
and
get past. Yeah.
yes, add some
So you
little
just
extra.
keep your lips in this position and you just make a lot of vowel sounds. Yes, it's so good.
So
Yes.
where I live is bilingual French and English, and you're not that
Oh,
wrong.
do you speak French?
I took it in school. Like
Cool.
I could carry a conversation if the person understands English. I can understand you speaking French, but
Mm,
for me to translate and like reply in French in real time is like it's harder for me to do now because I don't have to speak it, in my day to
yeah,
day life.
yeah.
But it's like if someone's talking to me in French, or if I'm watching a movie and like it's someone speaking French and it's subtitles, like I can generally follow along with what they're saying. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Oh,
It
I'm
sounds a
jealous.
lot less elegant than the way you just pretended to sound, though. It's a real harsh
Okay.
French where I live.
Interesting. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I haven't heard French from up in the land of
French
Canada.
Canadians, they're
Yeah,
not super elegant with their accent.
interesting. Wow,
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Cool.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, just making
that's
up
funny. The
languages.
nightmare thing, that's really funny. That because
Yeah.
that would be a thing that I get nightmares about, like a project not being done at work or something. I'm like, wait, I did that 6 months ago. It's well past. So yeah, I understand that panic moment when you wake up, what that would be like. But at least, like you
Yeah.
said, it pushes you to get back to practicing so that you don't
Yeah.
actually
Gotta
encounter
get
those.
prepared. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so my biggest fear that didn't come true thank God during the FanFest, and the Eorzean Symphony was just like, okay, these are a lot of lyrics, and
Yeah.
even though they're in English, they're
They're
really
wordy.
wordy.
Yeah.
And they're still translated originally from Japanese. So sometimes they don't make perfect sense in a way
Right.
that if an English speaker was conceptualizing it, or they're really flowery and really poetic in a way that's different from English
I was gonna say they're
poetry.
not usually in a way that people speak normally. Like there's a
Mm,
lot of sort of like the way like flowery is a good way of putting it. Like a lot of very pretty
mhm.
ways of saying things that you could say a different way normally.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
just a lot of syllables because Japanese has so many syllables in the words. They'll speak a lot longer to say
Yeah.
something that translates in English that
Right.
is maybe one sentence, and it would
Yeah.
like take a long time to say in Japanese. So
Yeah.
if Soken is writing these melodies with Japanese in mind, so they're long, drawn out, oftentimes very have a lot of eighth notes, which are shorter notes. So
Right.
in Japanese, each of those notes might be a syllable. So
Right.
then Koji has to go and like magically figure out,
Yeah.
okay, how do I keep
That
the
guy's a
integrity of
madman.
this melody?
Yeah.
Yeah, while still not just doing a literal translation because it needs to make sense in English and still be poetic in the same way that
Right.
their meaning in Japanese. Like that is such a hard job. I don't know
That
how he does it. And
amazing.
he's a musician too, which I
True.
didn't realize that until I spoke to him about it. He was a percussionist, so he
Yep.
really has a keen understanding of rhythm
Yep.
and how to translate Japanese rhythm to a rhythm that makes sense in the phrasing of English.
Sure.
It's like it's hard. Yeah, and he does a good job. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a skill I do not have. That is very impressive to me when and because like I'll look at lyrics of some of those songs. And did I read or maybe I heard you say in another interview, did you perform the oh, of course I'll forget the name of it. The Titania song, what's her
Yeah.
did you
What
perform
age?
that some yeah, what that's it.
Yeah.
Did I read that you performed that at like FanFest or something?
All of them.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, that's a
And
lot
the
of
funny
lyrics.
dude, let me tell you about this. Yeah, I mean, this was one of the songs I was stressed out about. So, I didn't originally record that. Some people think I did. I didn't record that in game. I've
Oh,
recorded
sure.
the orchestral version of that. Yeah, I didn't come in until Shadowbringers. Um, but anyway, I sang it in this piano recording with Keiko, and when Keiko made the piano track for that, she took it at a speed that is amazing, but is way faster than even the original recording, and the original recording is already
It's
pretty quick.
fast, yeah.
It moves along, and the funny story is that Koji, when he first heard me sing that, he was so surprised because he didn't know that it was gonna be on the FanFest program, and
Sure.
he heard the piano part, and he was like, "Wait, this sounds familiar. Is this what Angel Wakes Me? Oh, she's doing a piano solo." And then I start singing. He's like, "No, there's no way. She's singing this right now. This is so much faster than the game." And when he wrote the lyrics for that, he specifically wrote it as wordy as he thought was possible to be sung at that tempo, which was
Right.
slower than the one that I was
Yeah.
doing with Keiko. So he was just like completely flabbergasted and mind blown that even happened. And I'm like, dude, me too. There's no place to breathe in that song. There's
No.
absolutely no place to breathe.
I
For
heard
like
I think it might have been another interview where you had said something about performing that and I was like I had to do like rewind like wait, what? Like she did that song? That's
yeah.
obviously it was recorded for the game, so someone sang it, but
Mhm.
to do it in like some kind of, and it was a live performance, you said, to do that song?
Yeah, at every
God,
FanFest. Yeah.
wow,
And
good
it's
for
the
you.
first song I sing. So I'm
Of
got like when I
course.
first walk out there, I'm like excited and I've got adrenaline and my heart's like,
Yeah.
and then I have to go sing that song where my heart's going, it's even harder to catch my breath.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Don't make it
when I
easy on
when I
yourself.
oh, no, it's good. Just like challenge, you keep leveling up that way.
For sure.
But yeah, when I walked out into the Tokyo Dome, nothing could have prepared me for what it was like to see the people sitting in the seats.
Oh, wow.
And I walked out on a completely dark stage, huge stage. So it took me like 30 seconds to walk from where I was to the center of the
Sure.
stage. And in Japan, the audience is so respectful. So
Yeah, they're a
I
lot
didn't walk
quieter, right?
out. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was silent.
Yeah.
And it was just me walking out in darkness, seeing all these people with the lights in their hands, and I was like, oh. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, we're off to the races. I
Wow.
better get a good breath in because there's no turning back.
And oddly enough, I've heard that about Japanese audiences from like professional wrestling. When like you go to a wrestling match in Japan, there's like no cheering. It's like very respectful, even in that format.
That's so wild.
Yeah,
That's
it's so cool.
crazy.
Yeah.
There was a professional wrestling show right before FanFest. That was the thing that preceded us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very different tone from one of those events to the other. Yeah.
I wish I could have gone in there. That would be great.
I'm sure it would be an experience for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've heard you talk about, you have like a pretty inspiring story about kind of like sticking with your dreams of doing soloist work and kind of veering a little away from doing like kind of going the full chorus route. Can you speak to that journey a little bit?
You really researched.
That's great. I had to do it justice for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks. Yeah, that's something interesting about Los Angeles that I didn't realize. Again, you're not taught these things in school.
Sure, yeah.
When you're at a university or at a conservatory, it's like, this is how you sing Mozart, and no practical application to the industry or the business or anything.
Yeah.
But Los Angeles thrives on choruses, on choirs. And that's really cool because we have the best choir in the nation.
Sure.
Here, I would say maybe we do have the best. And globally, we're contenders also.
Yeah, highly regarded for sure.
Yeah, and partially that's because of the amount of work we do for film and TV here. There's choruses all over, things that you hear all the time. So it's really important to have that here in spades. And so most of the work is choral work. Most of the singers, if they are soloistically inclined, are also singing in choruses, and to each their own. But that was something that when I first graduated, I was kind of encouraged not to just jump into choruses.
Sure.
Especially because I'm a soprano. And oftentimes the prized aesthetic for soprano sound in chorus is a boy soprano sound.
Oh, okay.
For whatever reason, directors are obsessed with that. Some people think that's just the right way for sopranos to sing. So boy soprano, if you can imagine, it doesn't have a vibrato, really. They're singing very pure, very kind of breathy, which is lovely. It's super lovely. But a grown woman's sound generally is not sounding like that naturally. Right. So some people do sound like that. And that's cool. If that's how you sound, like, you should do that work.
Yep.
But it's kind of expected that sopranos are all going to do this 100% of the time. And it almost becomes a competition amongst the sopranos, like who can sing the straightest, who can not poke out the most, who can strip their voice of overtone so much where you're only getting the fundamental, that music nerd talk there.
Yeah.
Just to touch on that, if people are like, what's going on? When you play a note, there's actually a whole spectrum of notes that are playing on top of that. Kind of like how a color is more than one color. Like purple is blue.
It's like
and
a
red.
mixture of other colors or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're getting a spectrum when you sing one note, but you can manipulate your sound in a certain way that's kind of cutting down on some of those overtones
Sure.
and is just creating the fundamental, and it's really like, oh, in your face.
Sure.
And that's kind of like what's happening with a boy soprano sound. So all that to say, I don't want to do that.
Right.
I didn't want to make that my career. I didn't want to make that what was paying my bills.
Right.
Because if I did, my technique would be suffering. That said, there's like one soprano in LA who comes to mind when I'm saying it can't be done, it can't be done. She's an amazing solo singer and a great concert chorister, you know.
Sure.
But that's a very rare exception.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to fuck with that. So
yeah. Well, and the what I liked about you telling that story when I heard it before is just that it's like you're just following what you want to do. You're not putting down people that want to do that stuff. If that's what they like to do, they just like to sing in a choral sort of format or whatever, and they're good at it, and so I like that it didn't come from like a negative sort of space. It's just like, no, you know what you like doing, and you really sought out as much as you could to achieve that. So I don't know, I think more people should have that attitude about the things they love. So I thought that was really a good story.
Well, it was hard because for many, many years I felt like I should want to do chorus work.
Right.
I should be striving to sing in these choirs. What's wrong with me?
Sure.
Maybe I'm not taking my career seriously.
Yeah.
But when I really kind of pared all of that societal judgment in that industry away, I was like, no, really, I just don't want to be doing this for these reasons, and that's fine. And maybe I'm going to work less, or maybe I'm going to be doing different work. But something tells me that if I really stick to my highest fulfillment and joy and my standards for myself here, that something will happen. Like, I just kind of had faith in that, because there definitely I couldn't see the future. I still can't see the future.
Sure.
I'm not sitting here pretending that like this is gonna be the be all end all of my career, and like I want to keep leveling up. I want to keep doing more things outside of Final Fantasy 14 and throughout that world. I don't want this to be my like one-hit wonder.
Your only thing. Yeah, exactly.
For example. So I'm always thinking of how, what do I love? I always have to come back to like what brings me the most satisfaction and fulfillment as an artist.
Yep.
And not necessarily what's going to make me the most money, because if I thought about that, I would just be singing
for sure
choral music all the time, and I would be a different person.
Obviously, in a very different context, I've been in a situation where I took a job that was very good pay and very good hours, very good like work schedule. It was like 4 days on, 3 days off, but it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights. And I hated it. And
goodbye weekends.
Goodbye any kind of social life, right? And so when I found my current job, which is a much more normal 9 to 5 kind of, work schedule for me, I took, a decent pay cut to get out of that thing I was in, because like, well, I should just do this now and make some money. But it's like, I'm happy to hear you say that, because you could easily just be like, well, I can make more money if I just take all these other jobs. When it's like, but like, what's the point at that? Like, why are you even like, how are you enjoying yourself then if you don't like what you're doing, right? So
you're undercutting yourself, and in the end, that's not going to be valuable and not sustainable. So.
And that's not what you're going to remember, 20 years from now or whatever, when you're looking back at your career, right? Is the So I really liked hearing that story, and I hope someone hears it and kind of takes that as inspiration to not just follow what you think you're supposed to do, and really take time to think about what you want to do, right? So I think that's a good message to have. And the Crystal Mommy tells you that to do that, then you better listen, right? So
Yeah, and I mean, I would just add that, knowing what you don't like is a great way to start to
Yeah.
learn what you do like.
Yeah, that's a
And
great
then,
point.
yeah. And then from there, like, just get really
Sure.
specific as you can with what you do like,
Yeah.
even if it's like weird or seems like that doesn't exist or that's too broad, too grand of a thing. Like,
Right.
doesn't matter. Get really specific, because the more you can visualize what you want specifically, the more that those doors open to you.
Yeah.
And that's a practice that I have had over the last 5 years or so. I've journaled.
Sure.
I've done a 1 year, 5 year, 10 year vision plan for
Yeah.
myself. What do I want to accomplish in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? And I was as specific as I could have been
Okay.
when it was possible. And a lot of those things are happening. Like, one of the reoccurring ones for me was that I would be touring in symphony orchestras all over the
There you
world.
go.
And this year I have like 5 or 6 different bookings globally.
Wow. Good for
With
you.
orchestral stuff,
Yeah.
so I'm like, well, that's happening. And that only took just like a few years of me journaling that, because I
Yeah.
was specific, and then I was able to align steps and goals with that
Well, and it helps you
achievable
recognize the things that can
dream.
help you get to those. If you're that
Hmm.
specific, it can give you that sort of extra layer of sort of insight to see that, oh, this thing might help for that thing I specifically wrote out that I want to do, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, good for you. That's incredible. Yeah, great. I really liked hearing that story when I first heard it. So we'll talk. Lastly, we'll step outside of our Final Fantasy nerddom, and I'll give you a break from that for a little bit, because you mentioned there's actually a good segue that you mentioned you want to branch out in other things too. So outside of Final Fantasy music, what other, if there are other series that you've ever had eyes on or have heard about, mute from like a music standpoint, what other series, if it's game or not, that you would like to appear in, whether it's musically or voice acting, like you had mentioned you're trying to do too. If there's another series that you got your eye on.
Yeah, when it comes to gaming, my scope is really not there at all, because
Sure.
I've just been so focused on playing 14.
Yeah.
I bought a PS5 today, and I'm gonna pick
Oh,
it up probably when I'm done with this. Because I want to start playing other games and
sure.
knowing more of the landscape, and like, what do I actually like in games? Do I
Yeah.
like mystery? Do I like horror? Do I like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I wanna explore. So hopefully I'll have a better answer for you with
Sure.
that later.
Sure.
But I mean, one of my specific dream goals that I have is, I would love to sing a major theme on a film that Hans Zimmer is scoring.
Oh, okay.
Like,
I know that name.
hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. That would be amazing. Like, think
Sure.
of the Gladiator theme song,
Yeah.
how well known that was. It's what's like dated at this point, but Dune is cool. He scored Dune. Dune is interesting because he used 3 different voices. One is Lisa Gerrard, who did the Gladiator theme song,
Oh,
and
okay.
2 others are singers in LA, and he blends them together in a way that is this kind of otherworldly, kind of weird, strange voice, because it's actually 3 voices blended together in this theme that you hear there,
Wow.
which is really interesting and unique. But yeah, so to be able to work with him or someone like him that is making music that's being seen and heard on a really broad scale
Yeah.
is definitely something that I would love to do.
Well, yeah, that would be top
Mhm.
tier for sure. Um,
Yeah.
Go ahead if you're gonna say something.
Yeah, and this other idea I had that I am fortunate to know and communicate with Neil Gaiman,
Okay.
who, if you are unfamiliar with anyone watching, he's an author. A lot of his books have been turned into films. He wrote the Sandman comics, that's been turned into
Yeah.
audiobook and series, and he did American Gods and Good Omens. And so I met and worked with him during a Good Omens marketing
Okay.
thing, where I was a satanic nun, singing satanic nun, and that
Sure.
was very strange and super fun and wild and wacky. It was all improv, and we sang these Queen songs that were
Okay.
arranged for 4-part women's a cappella
Okay.
performances to themes from Good Omens. Yeah, it was just so crazy.
Sure.
So I met him and John Hamm and like
Oh,
a
wow.
bunch of people. I was on some like TV interview shows with John Hamm. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, but anyway, so I elevator pitched Neil Gaiman an idea
Okay.
to write a song cycle for soprano based on kind of loosely based on Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles.
Okay.
So like a sci-fi themed classical song cycle, because I feel like sci-fi is not really an element that is explored very much in classical music. And when I
Yeah.
say classical, like any modern composers can write classical music. It's just classic. There's classical and there's popular music.
Right. Sure.
Different styles,
Yeah.
So, and then like who would compose a song cycle written by Neil Gaiman? I feel like if we got that going, we could probably get a big name composer to be involved in a fucking Neil Gaiman production.
Sure.
With Ray Bradbury story, like hello, maybe Hans Zimmer would want to write that.
Yeah. Hey, you got to put it out there, right? That's all that matters. So, you mentioned like your narrow gaming scope. So this is why I prepared this question. So because I've heard you talk about like your N64, gaming memories or whatever. If you could take one of the games that you remember from that sort of, era that you were, more familiar with before, modern days, what game would you like? If you could bring a game forward into like modern technology games, consoles, whatever, and perform in it, whether singing or acting, what do you think you would like to bring forward?
First thing that came to mind, which doesn't really work for like voice acting or singing, is Roller Coaster Tycoon. What would I do? Like scream on the roller coaster? Yeah, just barf like throw up sounds. It would be all efforts.
There could be like a carnival, like a stage as part of the amusement park with a singer there or something.
It's terrifying merry-go-round theme song. Give everyone nightmares.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that answer. That's fantastic.
The Sims, like I recently saw some video. I mean, this was a while ago, but I think Katy Perry sang one of her songs in Simlish.
Oh, really?
Back in the day. Yeah, when they did a newer
like some expansion or something. Yeah. If that exists, I need to find it because that is hilarious.
Yeah, look up Katy Perry singing in Simlish. So into it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Simlish.
Great answer. That was a great answer. I appreciate that. Cool. That's all I have, Amanda, for my questions. Cool. I really appreciate you taking the time. If anyone listening wants to find you, where can they look you up?
I'm in all of the places. You can watch me on Twitch. I'll throw that out first. It's The Real Crystal Mommy on Twitch. Twitter, it's Amanda _Achen, Achen. I just changed that from singing Amanda, but not everyone knew I was singing Amanda. So my first name, last name, _ in between. Cool. Instagram, it's Amanda Sings Things.
Okay.
I had a TikTok. I have a TikTok. I don't know. I don't really TikTok.
Sure.
So many.
And I'll throw these links in the description so everyone can find it too.
Yeah. Twitter and Twitch, probably the best places. So
you mentioned that you're streaming. Anything else that you're working on? Distant Worlds, you said, is forthcoming. When is that taking place? That you're going to be in? Yeah, right now the ones that are announced are Carnegie Hall in June 22nd, and Seattle July 5th and 6th. And I think there's some others that are like on hold that aren't like totally booked and announced yet. So I don't even know. Yeah, sure. But hopefully it turns into a whole tour. I think that's the goal. I've been to 2 Distant Worlds concerts before, and they are absolutely incredible. So I hope videos of your performance make their way online, because I would love to see that.
Yeah, yeah. I just booked MomoCon. That's
Oh,
the
okay.
first convention that I have ever done. So
Sure.
I'll be at MomoCon if you're
Like performing
anyone.
or?
Yeah, I'll be performing with the artist Peach on Sunday at 4 p.m. She always does a Final Fantasy piano concert,
Oh,
and I will be
nice.
singing a song there with her. And then I'll have like a booth, and people can come meet me and do the whole thing. So
Amazing.
yeah, that'll be
Perfect.
fun.
Well, there'll be no shortage of content for us to watch, to enjoy, to see
Exactly.
what you do next, Amanda. So,
Yeah. Thanks.
thanks again for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. And if you guys aren't already following Amanda, I'll put all her links below. Go show her some love, and yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right on. Thanks
Garrett.
everyone.
Oh, bye.
Bye. Perfect.
Hearts. Does it do the hearts on here? It does. Look at that.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, I should have thrown that out there.
I'll put it in.
Come on. Do it again.
I'll throw it in at the end of the episode. Yeah. I didn't stop recording yet.
Oh, good.